Hello all, my name is Piotr and I build drum guitars. I've been doing some more work off camera on the fretboard and those inlays. I put a very thin layer of epoxy on top of the sanded down markers just to see if those little tiny bubbles can be filled. Based on my tests, they can, but what's happening here is that the resin is still quite flexible. So I don't want to rush it and start sanding resin that is not fully cured. So I'm going to take that off and leave it on the side for another week to just cure properly. And I'm going to focus on something else. And I'm also getting used to the thought that I may be doing a second fretboard for this build, because I really don't know what this is going to look like. So if it's not perfect, I'm not going to use this fretboard. I'm going to prepare another one. I've got a beautiful ebony black ebony. I think it's going to be perfect for this build if that doesn't work out. So what I want to focus on for now is the body. You may remember the binding that I ordered and the router bit I used for cutting the binding channel. So the binding channel was deeper than the binding itself, so I ordered a thicker binding. And this is it. This is a binding that is 1.6 millimeter thick. And it actually matches the, that's the old binding. That's 1.5 millimeter thick and it doesn't match the channel. This one, however, is 1.6 millimeter thick and it matches the channel very nicely. And it's also quite a bit taller than the original one. So what I decided to do is to recut the binding channel to the depth of the top, so that we don't have this, I called it purfling. It's not really purfling, it looks like a purfling, but it's part of the top that it's just left over because the original binding wouldn't cover it. But this one is tall enough to cover the entire top. So I want to take this opportunity as well and fix some places on the perimeter of the body, like this part here where the jack will be. This one has some dents. I know it will be drilled out and all, but I want to sand it flat with no dents and then just go over the perimeter. There are some imperfections here as well. I want to make it absolutely perfect and then cut the binding channel again, only to the correct depth, and I can look into binding the body. That'll be fun. I'm not decided on the method I want to use yet. I need to get a heat gun because I haven't got one, and this binding is really thick and it will require a heat gun to go over the tight corners. The main question I'm having is what method will I use to attach the binding, and I could use super glue, which is your normal method, I guess, or I can use acetone, and I'm tempted to use acetone, even though I never used it before. So acetone does not behave like a typical glue. It does not dry between two surfaces here, but rather it melts the surface of the binding, this specific plastic, and when it evaporates, it just melts into the wood. So there is no glue, there's just the binding itself that is melted into the wood. And I'm tempted to use that, but I've never done that, so I'd have to do some research on doing that properly the first time, and possibly doing some tests. I'm hoping that I have enough binding to actually do testing. Yeah, so I should have like half a meter of this to spare, so I can actually cut a binding channel on this on an offcut and try and glue it in with acetone. And this is what I'm going to do. What I need to do though is sand the body a bit where I'm not happy with what the edges look like, and then prepare the router table to reroute the binding channel. Let's do that. So this flat bit here where the jack lid has some dents, and I want to get rid of them by sanding them out. So I'll go with some that's 240, 120 then 240, to see if that comes out nicely. And I'm using an MDF offcut as a sanding block. I want it to be really flat, and I want to be able to control the angle as well. So why am I doing this now? Is because you may remember that this part of the side of the guitar now will act as a template to route the binding channel. So if I cut the binding channel first, then by changing the shape of the side, I will change the distance between the edge of the binding channel and the edge of the body. Well, if I sand it first and smooth it out perfectly, I then create the final surface of the side, which will then perfectly match the binding channel, which I'll cut later. Right, so those dents are gone now. I want to work on the shape of this surface here. I like a sharp line as a transition between the curved surface here and the flat one here, and to make it look good it needs to be straight. So I'm trying to adjust the upper portion, if you look at in this way, the upper portion, because it's not really straight. Okay, 240 now, to leave a nice smooth surface. Yeah, I'm happy with this section. Now this concave section has some imperfections which I want to work on, but it's rounded off, so I will need the metal pipe that I used for sanding. And yeah, I'll start with 120. Okay, I'm happy with the surface now. It's sanded up to 240, which is plenty. For some reason I can't get a 320 sandpaper here, which is weird. It seems to be the one grit that is just not there. I need to look harder, I guess. But 240 is plenty enough, so yes, I'll prepare the router table and set up the cutter to the height of the top. So it will be like this. So it removes the entire perimeter of the top. It doesn't have to be very precise because at no point these two surfaces will show. It would be different if, like for example on the neck, where your binding runs off with the fretboard and then only the neck wood is left. If there are differences in levels between the binding and the fretboard, it will always be visible. So if it's deeper than the fretboard, the binding just stops at some point, and if it's not deep enough, then you see the fretboard under the binding, like here, which is in some cases fine, but I've got different plans for this guitar. So yeah, let's get it cut. Okay, so as you can see here, this is already cut, and I'm still leaving some of the top wood visible. So I'm going to go a bit deeper with the cut, just a tiny bit, but unfortunately necessary. That should do it. Let's try again. So as you can probably see, the entire depth of the top is now cut off. The binding channel looks really crisp, I really like it. And the new binding, which is thicker and also taller, seems to be fitting nicely. Yeah, and I also cut a binding channel here in this test piece of wood. It's an offcut of the body, and I will try and stick it on with acetone. We'll see what happens. So I measured roughly how much of the binding material I absolutely need for the fretboard, and again it was like half a meter overhang, so I cut off this bit and I will glue it onto this wood with acetone. Okay, I have a tiny syringe with a tiny needle, and I will attach this binding to this section here with masking tape, and then I will inject some acetone in between them, and we'll see what happens. I will sand it down first, just a tiny bit. I will be sanding down the entire length of the binding when I attach it on to the body and the neck, but this is just for this test here. It's good practice to sand down the inner edge that sits here inside, in case anything sits in the very corner there and prevents it from getting in nicely. Okay, let's stick it on with a masking tape. Not sure what's the best way to do this really, because if I mask it off, I can't really inject acetone in there, but maybe I can. Yeah, I should be able to reach in. Let's see. Okay, not much of the acetone needed. Let's see on this surface first. Let me get you closer. So I'll start with the open sections first, and then I'll try to inject it under the masking tape. Let's see how it flows. Okay. Oh, it gets everywhere on its own. I don't think I need to be concerned with the masking tape at all. So it definitely melted the binding. You can clearly see it melted on the inside there. I can't see anything here on this side, so I don't know if it flows all the way in, or should I put some on this surface as well, or in this gap here. I'm afraid that if I put any acetone here, it will just melt into the surface and it will look ugly. So I'll leave it for now, and I guess we'll see how well it sticks. I'll try to rip it off and see where exactly the acetone penetrated enough to stick it on. We can always do another test, right? I don't know how long this dries, So let's leave it for a minute or two. So it's been a few minutes now, and I think this should be ready to, let's see. Okay. So it's coming off straight away, which is not a good sign. Right. So it turns out it only melted the very top. The very edge. I think I need a lot more acetone. Let me stick it back on and I'll try again. Okay, I'm gonna flood it with acetone now. And because I put it very tight, I'm expecting not much to actually penetrate through, so I'm going to actually flood it and see what happens. So let's start with this edge and observe what happens. Put some binding on the tip of the syringe, on the needle. Definitely works. If this technique doesn't really work and that the acetone doesn't penetrate down to stick the entire surface of the binding to the wood, then I'm going to go with super glue. I guess I can try using thin super glue. But with thin super glue, I'm worried that it will soak into the wood. It will essentially seal the wood and prevent the stain from soaking, and yeah, it will not look good. So it will require sanding and scraping until the glue is out, and then staining again. So yeah, let's give it a couple minutes. Okay, so it's been like 10 minutes. Acetone should be left for like 12 to 24 hours after it's applied, apparently. So this is clearly not the right way to do that. All I want to see though is if it penetrates. Oh, this is stuck properly. Ah, it's not. Okay. No, it's not. So it did not penetrate all the way down. It just collected here on top at the edge, soaked into the wood. It evaporates quickly, so it's not a problem. But let's see. Now the edge is crisp. The edge is not a problem at all. The problem is that it does not penetrate. I think I'm going to stick to super glue. So I have this nozzle that will allow me to pour very thin, very small amounts. And what I want to do is stick it on with the super glue, tape it up, and to see if that creates any problems. Okay, I'll start with the left side. This is dried. Start with the left side and I'll pour some super glue in, and then I'll tape it up. It's not thin enough just to wick in there, but okay, let's see. I'm not worried about it soaking into the top, because the top will be sanded flat after the binding is scraped and all, so that's not a problem. But this section here on the actual body, not in this test piece of wood, but on the actual body, the sides should not be sanded anymore. Since it's super glue, it will dry very quickly, but let's give it a few minutes. Okay, so we're a few minutes later again, and we all know what to expect from super glue, so no surprises there probably. But I've been reading up on using acetone as a solvent for binding, and why would one want to use acetone rather than super glue? I know this wasn't fully cured yet or dried, but I could just take it off, which is not good. So there are a couple big issues with using super glue for binding. One being the glue soaking into the wood and preventing me from staining it properly, and that's a big one because I want to stain the sides and back black, and this will, if it seeps through, it will prevent the stain from penetrating the wood, and it will leave blobs of glue, really not stained. And we can see one here on top, and I really would like to avoid that. So I was reading on using acetone as a glue, and the best method apparently is to use a brush to have the binding prepared for the shape of the body, so you don't have to struggle with it, and then just brushing it on and taping inch by inch. And this seems like a method that I think would work, and since acetone on wood there's nothing, it just evaporates, I don't have to worry about the staining process later, because it will not affect even the end grain, it will just evaporate. So I think I'll do that, but to be able to do it, I need a heat gun to actually bend the binding correctly. So I will need to tape it up temporarily, use a heat gun to shape it around those tight corners and concave sections, so that the masking tape holding it in doesn't have to struggle, and the acetone can work its magic between the two surfaces. So yeah, heat gun. And then I will try and brush on the acetone. And I'll do it slowly, just like I watched a tutorial video. The guy was just brushing on the acetone and taping the binding straight after. And unlike with the test that I did, I will leave it on for 24 hours afterwards. So yeah, I think I'll leave it at this for this week. I need to get some tools and maybe do some more testing. I won't make you watch that all. Yeah, thank you for watching. Thank you for being here for this. Some exciting stuff is coming up. Well, for me, I'm a nerd, so yeah. And I will see you next week. Cheers, thank you. Love you, bye.